So I'm Harriet. I am Assistant Head Teacher for Assessment and Curriculum here. This is Jamie. So Jamie is our English lead for the school, so he looks at the phonics programmes, all of our English teaching, progression and things like that. So we're here to tag team today, all right? So, let me find my keyboard. I wanted to start with a question, what is phonics? And I'm really sorry if you know the answer to this, but it's a word that's used in education. It's something that all schools use, and it's an approach that all schools take to reading and writing. But phonics is something that we use to decode. So we use phonics to decode words and information. So we teach phonics to make sure the children can read, spell and write. So it helps children to identify and hear sounds and then match them to their written form. And just like any language, our language is a code. So what you see on paper is just a squiggle, and actually for our children they have to work out what that means. So if I said this to you, I'm just going to give you a little example of what it's like for our children. If I said that's that's a, and then that's s. They are literally just marks on paper, but we know a letter on paper has a meaning and it has a sound and it's got a letter name. Our children have to learn that through phonics. They don't just naturally know it. And so when we present them with something on paper or on a screen or somewhere, they have to know what that means, and the only way we can teach that is through phonics approach. So at Springwell, we have two different phonics programs. We have Spring into Phonics and Read Write Inc. Hello, come on in, please come and take a seat. We've literally just started, so you're absolutely fine. I just said at Springwell we have two different phonics programs. So we've got Spring into Phonics and Read Write Inc. So Spring into Phonics is a program that is bespoke to Springwell. It is something that myself and some other staff have worked on and have created for our children. And it is purely to support our children with very early phonics skills. So building up to the Read Write Inc. program. So the Read Write Inc. program is a government accredited program, and it's a systematic approach. So it's very, very structured, and it teaches children to learn to read, write and spell. So both of our programs are intertwined. They link, they apply elements of both, and it's to make sure that our children have the best possible opportunity to succeed with reading and writing in the future. So a lot of our children start on in Spring into Phonics. When they come into early years, all children do Spring into Phonics. Some of our children at a later date move on to Read Write Inc. and some don't, and that is absolutely fine, because we have Springwellised everything we do through both programs to make sure that it suits the needs of our children. So, on to you then, Jamie.
So, as Harriet said, so we are signed up to and participate in the Read Write Inc. Phonics programme. It's been running for a number of years and is in lots of schools across the country as their mainstream phonics programme. So if we're looking at year 1s, year 2s, year R, they'll have a go at this as well. It's a structured programme, as Harriet said, and the letters are built into sets. There's 3 sets in the programme, set 1, set 2 and set 3. Set 1 is your most basic letters as seen here. And then we move on to 2 letters that make the same sound, not the same sound, sorry, 2 letters that make a sound, and then 3 letters that make a sound, and so on. And sounds that may be split up, so split digraph. That is learnt successively through the programme. The programme uses the same structure to teach each letter, normally. It involves a rhyme, a song, sometimes an image, as can be seen here, to help the children structure the shape of the letter and decode those squiggles that Harriet was showing earlier. When the children get through set 1 and set 2 and set 3, they build on also spelling skills using those sounds, reading words to do with the sounds that they've learned, and also participate in a storybook, a reading book, that is linked to the sounds they already know as well. Includes only letters they have known each letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, just to add, we've got over here, just to put it into perspective for you, this is our complex speech sound chart. And so you can see, thanks Jamie, we've got the single individual letter sounds, but then they are represented in so many different ways in the English language. So for the sound, it can be represented with an F, two Fs, a PH. Again, the letter C, a K. However, it's represented with a K, a CK, sometimes a CH. And so we have to, through Read, Write, Ink, teach our children all of these different ways of identifying a sound and how they can look, because the English language is really, really complex. It's not straightforward. Hats off to anyone that has to learn it as a second language, because there are so many different ways and anomalies, but we teach them all of these different things through the programme, and each next step builds upon the first. Okay.
And we also just, if you have a look on Read, Write, Ink online, they'll call these something different. But if they're two letters together, you'll hear us use the term best friends. So we teach them that these letters together, yes, to make one sound, A, but they're best friends together, and they spot the best friends in the word. I mean, A is a great example of what Harry was saying. A.
So many different ways. So that just helps you to sort of see just how much our children have to learn when learning to read, and that's not even including the common exceptions and things like that. Some words, there isn't a rule, that is just how they're spelt, and so we teach these, but we also teach tricky words, which we call our red words, and sometimes they are just common exceptions. They don't match any of the rules in Read, Write, Ink and the English language. They are purely just spelt that way. So Jamie will show you now just what they look like.
So if you are teaching a child to want to say want, if you're learning it phonetically, it would be w-a-n-t, want. But actually it's a common exception word, it's a tricky word, want. And unfortunately there's just, you have to, it's a process of just learning that is want, and that in this case, that A sound sort of disappears a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, reading this involves teaching children to say or identify the sound and write it. All children who are on the Read, Write, Ink programme will have at least 4 or 5 sessions of Read, Write, Ink a week to do around the speed sound they're learning. So it should be around, it depends on the child and it depends on the class, but it will be either 1 sound per week to really embed that learning before moving on, or we do find that some children can get a little bit bored about 1 sound a week, so we change that to 2 sounds a week. And we might flip between the 2, or do 1 at the beginning, 1 at the end, and then go check and make sure that sound's being retained before moving on to the next one. They will also have a try at writing the sound that they've learned, or writing the words that they're learning to read. We obviously do that on a child-centred approach, so what's going to be best for them. That might be writing in a book with a pen and pencil, it might be writing in sensory materials such as flour, it might be air writing it, but whatever is going to work for the child in front of us at the time. So we keep to the structure, but we individualise for the children. Once they know 5 sounds, we can blend together and form short words, and then progressively learn more. Also a note on this, it's not on there, but if a child is non-verbal or pre-verbal, it doesn't stop them from being able to read, and we can assess and manage that need as required for that child. And we have many children on the Read, Write, Ink scheme who are not verbal, and we assess them slightly differently, but they can still access it and they can still read.
Yeah. Perfect. No, I think that was everything. I think we can move on to the next bit.
You got people?
I've got the controls. Wait for the screen to magically change.
It's really important to make sure we're saying the sounds properly, which is really hard to do for our children anyway, if there's any speech and language needs there. But we as adults and we as teachers and professionals who are working with the children know that it is really important to make sure we're starting off with the correct sound and not adding anything after it, the schwas after the words and the letters that sometimes pop up, and really saying the pure sound. So it's just a quick video of how to say each sound correctly.
When teaching our child the speed sounds, it's very important that you don't add an R onto the end of consonant sounds. Say not m, not f, and not l. This takes some practice, but if your child learns to pronounce the sounds as pure sounds, they will find it easier later to put the sounds together to make a word. For example, it is easier to put the sounds m, at together than m, a, t. As you start to teach your child the first group of sounds on the flashcards, you will notice that each sound is either stretchy or bouncy. 5-year-old Sylvie will now show you how to say the sounds.
These are the set one sounds. These are the stretchy sounds. O, These are the bouncy sounds. These are the set two sounds. These are the long vowels. A, E, I, U, R, O, A, ow, oi. This will all set the sounds to learn. Aya, ear, yo.
It's just a short video just explaining how to say the sounds. It's worth practicing if you're at home with children, or they're really having trouble reading, or even just objects around that you see around the house, and naming them and making sure we're saying those sounds correctly. So if it's coat, it's k-oat, not any other variation of it, and making sure we're really saying this purely so we're not getting confused. So how can you help at home? Well, there's many things to do to help at home. Obviously, exposure to books, exposure to sound and reading together are the ultimate obvious ones, but in terms of just sound knowledge and helping those early skills of identifying sounds and blending sounds together. So practice the ones they've been learning. If you don't know, please use the home school diaries to ask, or parents can, teachers can send that information home if you want to know what sound they're on or what stage of a programme they're on. And also Fred Talk, which is a phrase used in Read Write Inc. to break down the words. So Fred is a character devised by Read Write Inc. which helps the children to know when, so Fred breaks down the word to the sounds, and then they use Fred Talk to blend it together. So for example, if you're going down the street, you see a car, 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 cat, 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 bull, bull, bull. I think that's right.
Yeah.
And just making it applicable to where they are in that moment, and anything can be a phonics lesson, basically. Anything is a reading lesson, anything is a speaking lesson. So it is really helpful just to practice those skills as and when you can.
Definitely. Yeah, so just to add to that, we will in future be sending home some reading books which we'll come on to shortly for your children, and some more information about where your children are in the phonics programme, so that you will have a better idea. What we wanted to do is we wanted to deliver the training first, so you have a bit of an idea as to what Read Write Inc. is, and then we will move forward and you will have some more information so you know exactly where your child is in the programme and what else you could do. We don't expect anyone to teach phonics at home. That's not the aim. It's more about consolidation and applying in your home environment. We all know that reading is so important for everybody, and we all do it all the time, whether it's a text message, a book, a newspaper, an online article. We all read at different points, and so it's so important that we can support our children to develop that skill. Our job is to teach them, but your job is just to support, and if there's things you could do at home that help, then that is fantastic. Okay, so moving on. So there are other things you can be doing at home. So those were the key Read Write Inc. things, but actually there's so much more that we do all the time at school that actually can be done at home, and it doesn't require specific resources, but you can do it in the world around you. So things like letter sound writing, writing different letters. It could be typing letters on a phone or a computer. It could be using your feet and walking in paint and drawing the letter on the floor. It could be with brooms, but just about developing the children's gross motor skills and fine motor skills so that they begin to become inbuilt in them and they learn how to form a letter. Because when we write now, we don't have to think about it. For a lot of us, it's just a skill that we have, but our children have to think about which way they move their hand, how the paper's lined up or the book's lined up, and so practicing that in different ways at home is so important. We've got a few different resources here of things that sometimes help. You don't have to have them, but things like this, it's a large letter, but you can paint over it, you can roll a marble over it, you can use a sponge, all different things, but it's helping that motor movement. Okay, so that's something that can be done at home. Fine motor activities are so important. So for our children to be able to hold a book, you have to have fine motor skills, because you can't use a palm to turn your page very easily. And so developing those fine motor skills so that they can pick up and grasp things. The same with a pen. If eventually a child was wanting to hold a pen and use a pen, they have to have a level of fine motor skills. So you could do this with things like pegs, tweezers, posting things into containers. That's so important, and you might think it's not really phonics, but it is. It's a skill that helps develop later phonics reading. Sharing books and stories. So stories from enjoyment is so important. If our children are going to read, they've got to be motivated to do so. They've got to want to look at a book, see what's on the pages, potentially read the words, and so we need to open their world up to different books and stories, and that doesn't have to be through a typical book. It could be through a sensory retell, so you might have sensory resources to tell a story, and there's lots on our website, I think, still that you can look at for that. It could be through puppets and just telling a simple story that way. It could be with a book. It could be, you can get something called a Tony box, which is where you pop a character on top and it tells a story, so it's just completely audio, but actually that's exposing our children to stories, and they might eventually then be like, I love that story, I want to look at the book. And so it's just expanding their interests with that a little bit. Physical activities such as climbing, crawling and sliding. So it is so important for our children to develop their gross motor skills, their core, their ability to cross the midline of their body. For us, you're all sat on chairs, you don't have to think about that, you just do it, you've learnt that over the years. But for our children, that's actually a really hard thing to do, and it requires a lot of thought. So for typically developing children, at the age of roughly 7 or 8, they become mind-free of their bodies, and that means They don't have to think about how they're holding themselves up, how they're sitting, how they're moving their arms. It just becomes inbuilt. But for our children, a lot of them are working prior to their typical age and their developmental age, and so it's really important that they have opportunities to do physical activities to develop that so they can become mind-free. You might have children that slump or choose to lay or lay on their tummies or sit to the side. That's because it's the comfiest position for them and it doesn't require them to have to think about it. A lot of children prefer to stand because actually it requires a lot less thought than trying to sit and hold themselves up. But when you come to reading and writing, you have to have control over your body to a degree, and so it's so important that our children continue to work on their physical skills as well. Turn-taking games. So the Read, Write, Ink programme uses a my turn, your turn approach. So a lot of the way we teach our children is by, I have a turn, I model, I show you, then you're going to have a turn. But actually our children have to be able to take turns to be able to do that. And it's a really hard skill, really hard. A lot of our children, they just want to turn now. I want to have a go, I don't want to wait, why should I? And actually playing turn-taking games really helps for our children to learn that I have to wait a minute before I can have a go. And they can begin to apply that later on to Read, Write, Ink, phonics, and lots of other different aspects of their learning. Sound hunts. So you can do this anywhere you are in your environment. If you're going on a walk, you might spot, as James said earlier, a tree, a car, and you might go, oh look, tree, so that you're really exaggerating and emphasising the initial sound of the word. It could be in your house. You might have, you might want to write letters on paper. You might have puzzle pieces, different letters in your home, and hide them around the house. That's a way to help your children find different sounds. We've also got an example here. So a lot of our children like to learn in a sensory way, and we support that. If that's how they choose to learn, fantastic. This is an example, it's just a baking tray and some cereal, but inside I've got letters, and you can support your child's phonics by purely exploring the tray and go, oh look, You might find a few, and then you might go, oh look, mad. So it can build in spelling skills, writing skills, moving the finger over it and making the formation purely through a very basic sensory activity, but something that a lot of the children would enjoy engaging in. So, sound and letter drawing and matching apps. There are so many available. If you've got an iPad, for example, you can download apps, and a lot of them make music and different marks when you trace over different letters and things. And so have a little look. I can send some information out as well of some really good ones to use. But a lot of our children like technology now. They like an iPad. It's the world we live in. It's everywhere. And actually, if that's a way into our children and a way into engaging them, then we can do that and we can use that. We can in school and the same at home. If you have access to that, please do use them, because it really does support the development of hearing the sounds, writing the sound, saying the sound if the child's able to. Read, Write, Ink book sharing. So you'll see on the side, and we'll have a look at them at the end, there's examples of our books, right from sound blending books, so the very, very early books our children start on, right through to grade books, which is where they finish the programme and they're reading more comprehensive texts. We have all of those books in book bag books, we call them. So they are books that can come home to you, and they look like this. This is just an example. They're paper. They're not quite so exciting because they are black and white. However, we will be sending home book bag books to children that we feel would be able to access them at home. We also will have an ebook portal that everyone will have logins to. So you'll be able to access them on an iPad, a computer, a phone, and if your child prefers to, you can read them that way. They are nicer, they're colourful and bright and a bit more engaging than a black and white book, but unfortunately you can't send the actual ones home. But these will all be coming out, and they will be a book that your child is confident in reading at school. So they will work on it over however long they need to at school, blending it, reading the words. Once they are confident, that book will then go home, and then your job is to purely enjoy reading it with your child. It doesn't have to be you teaching them because they know it at that point. It will just be like, oh, should I have a quick read of the book and have a little look, talking about it and things like that. So I'll talk a bit more about that in a mo. I think that's everything on there. So we also have the online virtual classroom. So Read, Write, Ink is part of the programme and the package we have and we use. We've got access to lots of different videos, lots of different resources, and there's lots of virtual classroom things that we will be able to send home to you. So some of our children like watching these, some aren't keen, and that is absolutely fine, they don't have to. But if it's something you think your children might like, we can send these home, and I'll show you a really quick snip just so you've got an idea of what that is.
Same. Watch me. Mountain. Mountain. Your turn. Nice work. You can read the sound.
So that's a really quick example. She does lots of things. She has animated Fred Frog, and they are making them much more interactive for our children. Like I say, some of them will really engage in this because it's on an iPad, they can watch it, they can join in. They don't have to, but it is available. And these go right up through to blending sounds into words. So we start at the very first letter and sound of but they move all the way through the programme. So regardless of where your child is on the programme, there are videos that can support. But also support you if you wanted to see exactly how we teach Read, Write, Ink. This is how we do it, but we do Springwellize it. So we adapt to the needs of our children. We follow the structure and the principles, but tweak it and change it depending on whether they are pre-verbal, as Jamie said, whether they're able to hold a pen, those kind of things. So this just gives you the foundations and sort of the key fundamentals to it. So, going back to the book, we just wanted to cover this in a bit more detail as to how you can actually support with reading a Read, Write, Ink book at home, but then also what you could do if you're exploring just a normal storybook that your child might enjoy. So within the books, we have got, let me find it, at the back, speedy green words. So these are the words that your child would have been taught to read, and they are in the story. So we teach them and build fluency with these words, so the speed at which they can read them. They also have this one somewhere. This one might not. Some of them have red words in them, and they are, here we go, they are, like we said earlier, the common exception words. So the words you saw on the red card, they are also in here that link to the book. So quite often we'll look at the green words together before we start and check the child can read them. We'll then look at the red words and make sure they can read them, and if they can't, support them to. Then we move on to talk about the story. And we do that because it sets them up with the best possible chance of succeeding, because they've already looked at the trickier words before they get into the story. But then it really is great for you to sometimes model the story. You might want to read it to your child because it's really good for them to hear different tones, different speech, but then it's really good for your child to also have a turn. So you might one night just think, oh, I'll have a quick read, and you can just listen to the story. But also it's great for your child too because they have read it at school. We quite often talk about the book. What can we see? What is there? Who can you see? What's happened? And they are very basic questions, but it helps to just unpick a bit of the story. Again, your child can still do this if they are pre-verbal. You might just say, oh, where's the chicken? So then they have to point, or, oh, I can see, for example, the ducklings following the mum. Where's that? So then they can start to point to the pictures, but you're also showing them what's happening in the story and inferring that meaning behind it. So they will be coming out, don't panic, there will be more guidance coming on it, but we wanted to just give you a quick overview of how you can use those books at home. We will work out a plan as to how long you have them for at home before they're swapped and things, but they will be fab, if you did use them with your children, because it really supports a collective approach to reading. So, love of reading. Can you see this one?
Yeah. So phonics is really important within sort of daily life, but more so in your children's daily lives, because it enables them to access an entire world of written stories, and actually of just life skills, road signs, timetables, anything that they need. But actually what we want to do is inspire the love of reading. We want children to want to pick up a book and not have to make reading or phonics the worst part of their day. So how do we do that? We do that through making reading fun. We do that through sharing stories with them that they love, making characters that they love, and also not being afraid to maybe reach back in time a little bit to find old stories that are still worthwhile. Dear Zoo and the Gruffalo are classics for a reason, and the children absolutely love them. But we need to do that. So the love of reading begins in children's early years, and storybooks are an important aspect of this. So first and foremost, we need to read books to children for the joy and nourishment of stories, not as a vehicle for teaching literacy. So yes, we've spoken to you about those storybooks and the sounds, and that is all really important. But actually, we don't want to do disservice to sometimes it is just nice to sit down and share a book, and that sometimes is enough, just to sit and read and share that time and create that enjoyment.
Perfect. Yeah. So again, it doesn't have to be directly with a paper book. It can be done with puppets. It can be done with massage stories. It's something we do a lot in school, and our children, if they can tolerate and they like physical touch, quite enjoy feeling it on their back or on their feet and their hands. And so we use different strokes and techniques to tell stories and rhymes. It could be a story you make up on the spot. It could be a story about your day and you're talking about something you've done. It's all stories, but it's just so important that our children are exposed to that. Like I said earlier, they have to have some inspiration to want to look at a book before they learn to read, otherwise they're not going to want to do it. Okay? So we have got, that is the end of the training, but we have got some resources to the side here which are helpful for you.